My forefathers are buildings in the sand. They left 1,000 ruins across the land. I love them deep like salt, they feel bitter on my skin. I believe in pleasure, they believe in sin. Listen to the crying in the street, all the lonely people that you meet. Children of the change caught like rats in a trap, but the little ones are dancing to the jukebox rap.
The Makgoba War of 1895 was not actually a war as you might think. A very short battle did occur, and this was due to tension build-up over the previous 5 years that ultimately led to the beheading of Chief Makgoba in July of 1895. Welcome, and thanks for joining me. And a special thanks to the two gentlemen at the Irish House in Polokwane who provided me with some interesting additional information. Now, although we refer to this as the Makgoba War, there were other tribes involved in the tension between the settlers and the native tribes. Since the discovery of gold in this area in the 1880s, more people came to settle in the Transvaal. According to Republican law, every voortrekker that arrived here before 1877 was entitled to land. In 1886, in an attempt to lure more settlers to the Transvaal, farms were given away free of charge on the condition that the occupant occupy the land permanently. Now, most of these settlers were European immigrants and mostly German. By 1890, the Houtbosberg area hosted 1,031 white inhabitants. Queen Mujaji also refused to pay taxes and was opposed to the relocation process. In applying this policy, the ZIR government distinguished between tribes bigger than 500 families and those smaller. The bigger tribes were given their own location, but the smaller tribes were moved south of the Letaba River, where they would have been subordinate to Chief Mamatolo. Chief Makgoba requested to rather merge with the Malepo tribe, since they were related, but for some reason this request was denied. Now, the problem, however, started in 1888 when they tried to negotiate with Chief Makgoba for land. They erected beacons for the white farms in the territory of Chief Makgoba, which his people destroyed. Negotiations did not succeed, and Chief Makgoba was taken to prison when he refused to pay the fine that was imposed on him. He was held prisoner at Fort Klipdam, or also known as Fort Hendrina. That's about 25 kilometers north of Polokwane. Now, Chief Makgoba escaped by digging a hole underneath the wall of his cell. He swore that white people will never catch him again. There is a collapsible fort structure in the town of Makgoba today that stood close to the fort. Now, this movable fort is the only example of its kind that can be found in the Transvaal. It was declared a national monument in April of 1971. My personal opinion is that this could have been the prison cell where Chief Makgoba was kept, and not in the actual fortified structure itself. Peace, however, was of short duration, and the situation gradually deteriorated as the natives became openly hostile. In 1891, Queen Mujaji was preparing for war. It is reported that she sent some of her men to buy guns from the Portuguese. In 1892, a commission was appointed to define the boundaries between the natives and the settlers without delay. The commission completed their task and informed the chiefs of their locations. The chiefs refused this, and the first attacks on the farms occurred. Many such incidents occurred in the following 2 years, and the occupational farmers started to leave the area. In March of 1894, Chief Makgoba was served with a final warning. to move to his location south of the Letaba River within a month, or he will be forcefully removed. In the meantime, war had broken out between the ZAR and the Bavendas of Chief Malebogo near Blauberg. Now, it was only in August of that year that the commando was ready to resolve the issue with Chief Makgoba. By this time, the families of the settlers in the area were accommodated at New Agata in the government buildings and in Heinetzberg in the school and in the mission station. When the commando arrived at New Agata, some of the smaller tribes realized that they were no match for the superior arms of the commando, and they surrendered. Other tribes were still defending their territory, but the rain prevented the commando from taking action. Now the natives believed that this was the work of the Rain Queen Mujaji. The one must be obeyed. Now the rain cleared on the 3rd of September, and the commando attacked the homestead of Chief Makgoba after a final ultimatum was sent. Chief Makgoba and his men offered fierce resistance in the beginning, but eventually fled into the dense forest. After his homestead was burned and the cattle driven off, the commando withdrew to their camp. After negotiations with Queen Mujaji also failed, the commando surrendered her homestead and demanded that she negotiated personally with them. After 4 days, she surrendered and negotiated with the white people. This was the first time that any white person has seen the Queen, which was a very old, wrinkled black woman carried out by her indunas. Her power and legendary magic has been destroyed. But if you have ever been to Mujaji's kloof, you will know that you can in a way still feel her presence in nature and in the climate conditions that is so typical of that area. Now, in the months afterwards, a number of 6 fortified structures had been erected in the Houtbosberg area. Unfortunately, these forts did not improve matters. In Petersburg, April 1895, it was decided to call up the commando again to launch an attack on Chief Makgoba. There were altogether 1,000 white and 2,000 to 3,000 black warriors, mostly Swazis, taking part in the attack. Now the black warriors that came with the commando all needed to tie a white band around their head to distinguish them from the others. The first attack was launched on June the 3rd, 1895. The attack failed when Chief Makgoba's warriors also tied white bands around their heads. The next day, another attack was launched with the help of some cannons. Now Chief Makgoba's stronghold was taken and burned down, but the chief and his indunas managed to escape. Over the next few days, small patrols were sent out to track the fugitive down. One of the patrols discovered them near the beginning waterfalls. Shots were fired, but they retreated. Now the forest is very dense, close to the waterfalls, and it would have been difficult to go after them. On June the 8th, one of Makgoba's wives that fell behind were captured. The Swazis had their own way of making people talk, and the poor woman was compelled to show them where Chief Makgoba and the other warriors were hiding just east of Letaba Heights. Now when Chief Makgoba realized that they would not be able to escape, he sent the women and children ahead to get away, while he waited for the Swazis alone in the footpath. He defended himself until he was overpowered, killed and decapitated. Now this was so that they can take his head with them as proof that he is dead. The rest of the tribe were surrounded and forced to surrender. Hugh Exton, a photographer at that time, took this rare photo of Chief Makgoba's head when it was brought to the commando. The war ended on the 9th of June 1895. All the guns that had been confiscated were melted down in a ditch close to Polokwane. This mass of melted guns were found in 1975 when the town's golf course was constructed. Today it is displayed outside the art museum in Library Gardens, Polokwane. In 2006, the land was given back to the descendants of the Cloud tribe. And as I understand, even as recent as 2018, there were still some issues regarding the land reformation process that were not resolved. It is believed that until the skull of Chief Makgoba can be found and laid to rest with the rest of the remains, certain issues will not be resolved. Chief Makgoba was buried on native land, and his skull was apparently kept in a museum in Pretoria. After some tests has been done, it turned out that none of those skulls were actually of Chief Makgoba. Hopefully one day this will be resolved and the tribe can live in peace. And we as a new generation can learn something from this, on how to treat one another and be respectful and considerate towards our fellow South Africans. A memorial in honor of Chief Makgoba was set up in Makgoba's Kloof Hotel. And that was the story of the Makgoba War of 1895. Thank you so very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.